What do you do when your manager threatens you over a sick day? When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a supermarket and took my job very seriously. I was always on time, usually came in early, and almost never called in sick. In fact, the last time I had taken a sick day was 9 months before, and even that day my manager sent me home because he thought I looked pale. So when I woke up one night feeling horribly sick, I knew something was really wrong. I spent the entire night shaking from fever, switching from burning hot to freezing cold, and running to the bathroom again and again. Around 2 a.m., I was so weak that I sat on the toilet with my head resting in the sink, trying not to pass out. Eventually, I must have fainted, because when I opened my eyes again, it was suddenly 7 a.m. I felt exhausted, dizzy, and confused, and there was no way I could go to work at noon. I called my manager, Steve, who had a bad reputation among the staff. He was the type who treated lower-level employees poorly, but acted friendly with other managers. He rarely believed anyone who called in sick unless he personally liked them. Ironically, he often called in sick himself, and most of us knew it was because he was hungover, not ill. When I told him I was sick, he immediately demanded details. I told him I thought it might be the flu, and explained I had been vomiting all night. Instead of showing any concern, he snapped at me, saying I was exaggerating. Then he said he needed me at work and told me to either come in or I would lose my job. I repeated that I couldn't stop throwing up, and he angrily told me to either come in or bring a doctor's note. If I didn't, I would be fired. I knew that in the UK, employees are legally allowed to self-certify for the first 5 days of sickness. You do not need a doctor's note unless you are sick for longer than that. In fact, it is illegal for an employer to demand one during the self-certify period. But even knowing this, I panicked. This happened during a recession, and finding a job was very hard. I was barely covering my bills already. Losing my job was not an option, so I forced myself to get dressed. My vision kept going blurry, and I almost fainted again. Still, I started the long 25-minute walk to the doctor's office, stopping several times to catch my breath and stop the dizziness. When I finally reached the clinic, I sat in the waiting room for over an hour, sweating and shivering. When the doctor called me in, she immediately looked upset that I had come. She told me clearly that sick people with flu symptoms shouldn't visit unless absolutely necessary. I apologized and explained that my manager had threatened to fire me if I didn't bring a note. I told her how scared I was of losing my job. As soon as she heard this, her frustration shifted from me to my manager. She asked if the company paid sick leave, and I said yes. With a sharp tone, she said, "So he wants a note? I'll give him a note." Instead of writing a simple confirmation that I was unwell, she wrote a detailed letter explaining that my manager forced me to come in, even though the law allowed me to self-certify. She noted my fever of 39 degrees, the fact that I nearly fainted in the waiting room, and that forcing me to travel while sick was dangerous. Because of this unnecessary strain, she signed me off for 2 full weeks, stating I was not allowed to work until the date she wrote. She even added that if I had been allowed to stay home as legally permitted, I might have recovered in a few days. She told me privately that she would have signed me off longer if the system allowed it without extra proof. I slowly made my way to work to hand in the note. When one of the duty managers saw me, they immediately said I looked terrible and should not be there. I explained what happened, and they insisted on helping me down to Steve's office. Steve read the letter and went pale. He tried to backpedal quickly, claiming he didn't really mean the threat to fire me, but the duty manager heard him say it on the phone earlier. They told him I needed to be taken home right away, and Steve stayed silent. The duty manager then drove me home, made sure I was safe, and returned to work to report everything to our union representative. A few days later, Steve had a disciplinary hearing. He tried to deny threatening me, but the duty manager confirmed it. Steve received a strong official warning. I recovered after a few days and spent the rest of the 2 weeks resting at home, enjoying the warm weather while being fully paid. Meanwhile, the store was short-staffed, so Steve had to take extra shifts and work overtime. In the end, because he demanded a doctor's note he wasn't allowed to ask for, I ended up with a 2-week paid break, and he got a formal warning and extra work.